Aha! Sophie's got the roving mic here. There. Yeah, and roving mic here, Simon. Who's got a question? Don't be shy.
There's someone at the back there.
Somebody at the back there. And then there's a question here. So maybe if we could get a mic here, mic there. Just our rules about the questions. I'm going to be ruthless. I'm only going to allow questions, and it needs to be a question. And do decide who you want it to be aimed at, please. And we want to get as many questions in as we can. And tell us your name and what it is that you do.
Hello. All right, cool. Nice to meet everyone here tonight. My name is Michael. Can you guys still hear me? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Michael. I'm a cybersecurity analyst, but also at night, me and my partner here, we're running a black Afrocentric art fair in a couple of weeks' time. Those that live or know Battersea Park, feel free to come and say hello to me.
Fantastic.
You get a free
Michael,
invite.
what's your question for the panel?
Yeah, I have to do a quick plug. Sorry.
But I'm loving the pitch. It's great, and I hope that people do come and chat to you after.
Yeah.
It's great. It's good.
But yeah, no, a question to all of you. So I started to read maybe about 6 years ago when I got injured, and I started to read a lot of self-development books. Mm-hmm. If one of you can pick out a book in your big libraries and your big houses, which book would you pick out and why?
Oh, I like that. Which book would you pick and why? And we've got a couple of authors here as well. Who wants to start with that question?
God, pressure.
Well, first of all, we'll mention yours.
Yeah,
Definitely stay in your lane. But what other books would you pick? And it's interesting because that's where the journey started.
Yeah.
I want a book. So Elizabeth, what book would you recommend?
Oh, Girl Boss by, I forgot her name, Sophia Aramiroso. Said her name wrong, apologies. That was a really good book, and Lean In was also a good book. I think without Lean In, we wouldn't be here. So when she emailed us saying that she loved the book, it was just such a kind of weird experience. So that book definitely was such an inspiration.
Yomi, what personal development book? And it's interesting, books do play a very powerful part. And as a journalist,
God, this is so bad because it's like, I genuinely, one of the reasons it was interesting when Elizabeth pitched Slaying Your Lane to me, it was genuinely don't read self-development books at all. So to be perfectly honest, in terms of like personal growth or like self-help books, I honestly can't recommend any, but a book that helped me grow a lot and that I recommend everyone from any background read is Elizabeth will know, Black Feminist Thought by Patricia Hill Collins, which is a brilliant, absolutely amazing book. It's not self-help in the way of like, it's gonna like help you make loads of money or get a big house with like massive bookshelves in it, but it's just brilliant in terms of like, I guess what me and Elizabeth attempted to do with Staying in Lane, which was to help people understand what it is to be a Black British woman. If it wasn't, at least in terms of what I was writing in Staying in Lane, if it wasn't for me having read that book, I wouldn't have even understood my position in this society as a Black woman, not British essentially, but Black woman, and just unpacking and unlearning a lot of sort of internalized racism and sexism and stuff like that. I think it's just an excellent book that everybody should read to just be a better person.
Am I allowed one?
Yes.
Apart from Soul Trader.
Apart
from Soul Trader. But I want to mention a slightly book with a difference. I read a book once, a magical book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. I don't know if anyone's read that. It's just a magical book about life and trust and flow and mastery and being yourself. I'd also mention the E-Myth Revisited, but also Business is Unusual by Anita Roddick. I like when people do things unusually. I'd mention that book. How about for yourself then?
Another magical one, the book of Ecclesiastics, Proverbs and Psalms.
Bible. Huh? It's in the Bible.
And that's by God.
Okay.
Good choice. Someday.
Actually, wow.
There's a book.
There's a book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard, Mike McCormack. Lots of practical advice. It's kind of like the IMG stories, that'd be interesting to you. What else? Shoe Dog, Phil Knight, the kind of Nike story. That's kind of fascinating. The endurance of that brand, being a kind of leader in the field over a long period of time. And I would say, I remember probably one of the early books I ended up reading was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Because I think, my parents' kind of generation, I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do to kind of generate an income, and fortunately I got
onto the property ladder at a young age. But my mother, you know, told me whenever I wanted to do something, she'd say no because, you know, very kind of risk averse. So, and obviously you do need to take kind of calculated risks. So I kind of the rich dad, poor dad, you're kind of how you think about money, you know, and good debt and bad debt.
Wonderful.
So.
Wonderful. Can we, well, the questions are coming thick and fast. I want to, in the meantime, also give a shout out. Can we just make some noise for all of the business libraries up and down the UK? Thanks for joining us, and the people watching the webcast. Let's go to our next question, and then we'll come to some online questions. Where is the microphone? Aha, tell us your name, what you do, and the question of, and if it's for anyone in particular or for all of our panel.
I'm B. Manzini, and I run Caramel Film Club. There's a few of the members in the audience today. And we, screen and support black films. I'm also a writer, journalist, and a poet. So my question is actually to Femi and Kanya. I know that Yomi and Elizabeth, you had said that you were kind of accidental authors. And I just wondered if either of you had specific ideas when you were setting up your school or the MOBO Awards in terms of numbers or who you wanted to see on the stage or things like that. Was your vision quite crystallized or did it evolve with you?
Good question. Was the vision crystallized or did it evolve?
For me, I really wanted just to disrupt the system. That's what I wanted to do, because there's been this massive tradition of just the same old things that are being churned out. And so what my aim was to put black actors in a platform where they can celebrate who they are in the most positive light. So as far as, you know, the purpose for me actually entering into it, that was at the core of it.
But you didn't have any numbers or anything in mind?
No,
just
not at all. Yeah.
Kanya?
Yeah, I mean, I was very kind of frustrated about the kind of black music events I used to go to because they were kind of so disorganized and, you know, there was a kind of stereotype attached to them. So I kind of felt whatever I had to do, I needed to make it high production values, organize, do, you know, turn the stereotypes on their head. So for me, it was about the vision was very clear in terms of the kind of aspiration for what it was I was going to deliver. In terms of kind of the income, I knew I was going to need to invest because I, couldn't get, raise any money. So I thought, I'm going to work very, very hard. I knew how much I was prepared to kind of risk. But I didn't have like a 5-year plan in terms of numbers I was looking to generate, no.
Thank you.
I just knew that when you're putting in your own money, I was going to make it work.
Like that. Next question. Actually, shall we just, before the next question, Jeremy, have we got questions coming in online? It's just making it seem as though we're global, which we are. What the question?
We've got a few coming through, thanks, Rashid. We could do with some more. Hashtag BL MOBO seems to be the winning hashtag at the moment in the battle of the hashtags. But just a lot of comment coming through on, and this must be the quote of the night, that knowledge shared is power multiplied, and my phone just lit up when that was shared. So maybe that's the takeaway, if anything, from all the quotes today. But one particular question around, there's a lot of the audience identifying a need. How is it that you can kind of validate your idea? We've heard a bit about that from Elizabeth and Yomi, but how else can new businesses validate that idea that they have?
Anyone want to pick up on that thing about that validating an idea? And it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because sometimes there's the passion, and it's interesting. There's I wouldn't say a divide, but it's interesting that there was that sense of needing to get that validation and checking it in. And then there's that drive, that pure drive to just absolutely make it happen because it needs to make it happen. So maybe I'll turn to this side kind of first. Validation, was that important, or was it just, no, we're just going to make it happen? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, from day one, we had artists that were wearing T-shirts saying we need the MOBO Awards to redress the imbalance out there. So I knew I couldn't go on this journey alone. So I knew I needed the kind of support. Talent needed to buy into it, and there needed to be an audience that wanted to buy tickets or be there. And so, in a way, you're testing. You're always kind of testing. But we had success very quickly, but in some ways that was very difficult because after we got huge success, the kind of mainstream organisations there was a lot of them in the music industry that wanted to get rid of us. And so that was another battle we needed to fight. But I think, you know, for us kind of customers, for your audience, you know, that feedback that you get is so important, you know, kind of testing it in a kind of a small way and getting that feedback and then adapting what you do.
And Femi, how about for you with that validation? Because it's interesting that moment where you talked about on the early days when you sent out flyers and so on, that first of all, just the 10 people who responded.
Yeah.
And I guess it must have taken a lot of work and to trust and hold your nerve to get things to unfold. So what's your thought in terms of that thing about validating one's idea? Because many people out here might be feeling, well, I need that in order to make that leap or to take that next stage.
I mean, for me, I think the secret really is in the self-validation first. You need to be able to validate it because that's where your whole purpose is for getting into it in the first place. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, then you've got to think about the external validation. And that was what's really, really important for me, that if I was going to create a product, I needed to make sure that it was robust. I needed to make sure that I wasn't cutting corners and I was willing to sacrifice in order to, you know, to mold and create this actual gift itself. So yeah, that was and for me, as fast as I talk, I still work at a really, really, really slow pace, just making sure that it's refined. Yeah, and it speaks the message that, you know, that I actually entered into it for. So, yeah.
I was going to even say, because in terms of idea validation, because we were on the outside so much in terms of the publishing industry, I think it was so important for us to kind of be so robust with everything that we did. And I think if we had maybe contacts or it was, you know, we worked in the industry, would be a bit more, I guess, like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And I think as well, we were so protective of the idea that we knew that we had to, like Kanya said, not be good, but be better, because we knew it was kind of like going to be like the first book of its kind. So we had to like make sure that we covered all bases.
Yeah, absolutely. Just completely agree with what everyone has said. Essentially, we're going into meetings with, you know, sort of round tables with people that like we essentially often be the only two people of colour, if not like black people within that room. So for lack of a better phrase, we had to come with receipts and we had to come to show that we actually knew our demographic. Outside of us just saying we're black girls and we think that this is important, we were able to sort of go there and be like, we've done a focus group, we've done a survey monkey, this is why this proposal looks this way. It's been validated by who the consumer will be, because, you know, I guess, yeah, we had, I guess when Elizabeth was saying earlier that, you know, we kind of, our conversations were less about sort of, it was about letting people down kind of politely. That was more because we went in there so strong and we had that strength because we had so many sort of, I keep saying receipts, but it's the only thing that comes to mind to back up what we were saying. Because if we'd have just left it down to our kind of like opinion, it's kind of like the flyers and the, you know, as you said, with people like kind of wearing it on their t-shirt, that it just strengthened it. And our proposal, even though, you know, we're very proud of our proposal, it was heavily strengthened by the fact that other people were able to kind of vouch for us and people that we knew we hoped would buy it. So yeah, it was very important to us to kind of prove that it was something that was necessary.
Excellent. And I would be amiss of me with that to not mention that if you were on that journey where you're also wanting to do research and all of that kind of stuff, the British Library's Business and IP Centre can help you on that journey to think about how can you do that. Next question's in the room. There's a question here. And where is the microphone? There's a question here. Let's maybe line up one of the microphones over here. We could have, isn't that brilliant? We could have one microphone on this side of the room and one over here. So let's maybe bring a mic down to this side. Let's bring one down. I think there's somebody got their hand up here. Don't be shy. By the way, I'm a big fan, can I just say this also? Big fan of asking intelligent, challenging questions. I know that sometimes we can be quiet and we can be shy, but I remember that a contact of mine contacted me a couple of years into running my own business, and they said to me, "Oh, Rashid, there's this event at the British Library, you should go along to it." And they happened to be running a little stall, and it was here in the Knowledge Centre. I'd never been to the British Library before, and I just trusted this person's judgment. So sometimes when people in business, you know, just follow their judgment. Anyway, it was an event called The Rise and Rise of Black British Entrepreneurs. Cutting a long story short, and I tell people this story very often, I asked an intelligent, challenging question. I became the most visible person in the room. It just so happened at that particular time, the Business and IP Centre was being developed. And cutting a long story short, I spotted an opportunity, and for the last 11 years, I've been the life and business coach to the British Library's Business IP Centre. I had to be able to bring it. I had to know my stuff, but I'm a big fan of the power of being visible and showing up and asking intelligent, challenging questions, because then suddenly you're the most visible person in the room, even beyond the speaker. So do take the opportunity. Don't be shy. Put yourself forward. Where is the microphone?
Hi.
Let's start here, and then we'll go here. Yeah.
Hi, it's amazing to meet all of you. My name's Miranda. I'm a PhD researcher and a writer as well. My question's for Elizabeth and Yomi. I have your book. I went to your launch at Waterstones. The book's amazing, and I admire you guys so much. I just wanted to ask you about your thoughts about the publishing industry, like seeing the success of your book and Akala's book and Rennie's book. It's so exciting. I'm a lot older than you guys, and growing up, there weren't these books. I was stuck with Judy Blume and Roald Dahl.
So your question is, what's your thoughts about it? Yeah.
So what I wanted to know is, for people who want to write, what do you think about the publishing sector at the moment and opportunities for, Black writers?
So what do you think of it? And can I add to that? What would your advice be? And so what do you think of it, and what would your advice be to somebody who wants to get into that field?
I think what I think of it is that it's changing, that's for sure. And I think we're in a weird sort of space at the moment. I keep saying this, where it's like, it almost feels like there's this kind of Black British renaissance in terms of like music, the domination of sounds like Afro bashment in the charts and like grime going completely mainstream. And then obviously in terms of film, thanks to people like Femi Oguns who put on people like Letitia Wright, John Boyega, we're really in a special moment, and I think it's no surprise that that's kind of trickled down through publishing. But publishing is still a 90% white industry in terms of who works there. It's heavily middle class. It's heavily female, which is interesting, because I think when we think of white middle class dominance, we think men, but it's heavily female. And that doesn't necessarily translate into diversity. So I think what we're experiencing now is like a kind of burst that's happened in every kind of other industry at the moment, and it's really exciting, and it's something that I think both of us really encourage everyone to sort of take advantage of. I hate to say sort of whilst it's here, because we always say in terms of our book, when people kind of like, oh, well, what if the diversity trend stops? We're like, well, Black women don't fall off the planet because diversity stops trending, essentially. But we are, when we interviewed Mallory Blackman about, obviously she's an absolute sort of literary icon, and we spoke to her about her journey within publishing, and we sort of said, what do you think about this like diversity trend? Is it a trend, or is this different? And she genuinely said that, every sort of 20 odd years, she feels like this, 10 odd years, so she's not that old by any means, sort of every 10 years that she would go to sort of parties in publishing, and she'd be the solitary Black person, and then after some years, they'd have like an obligatory second, and then, randomly there'd be this burst of sort of Black talent, and then it would sort of go back to how it was. So she was kind of wary, but I think what we're quite optimistic about, and what we do feel sets this kind of period of time apart, is things like the internet. I mean, if it hadn't been for the internet, and us basically Googling how to get a book deal, how to get an agent, then, we genuinely wouldn't be sitting up here. We had no access. Things like Twitter, as much as I just disparaged it a few sentences earlier, it's something that, that's essentially, it's a long story, but that's essentially how we got our agent, through scouring Twitter for people and just looking for contacts through that. And so it's definitely a game of two halves, I think. I think we're under no illusions about the fact that diversity is something that is trendy at the moment and trending. But that doesn't mean that real gains aren't being made, because people are taking advantage of the kind of period that we're in. And I think that real changes are taking place. I think what the sort of next level is about sort of like institutional change, and making sure that, at the end of the day, we still were pitching this book to an industry that was 90% white. I think what the sort of next level is, and the next sort of stage and phase that we're looking at, is making sure that, when we are pitching these books, we're pitching them also to people that look like ourselves, so that we don't have to, I suppose, be better when we're sort of coming into those rooms and explaining why it's important. Because to be honest, it can be exasperating trying to explain why, there is no, before this, as Elizabeth said, it was the first of its kind, there was no book that spoke specifically about being a Black British woman and how to sort of thrive in that context. So we don't like the term self-help book, but there was no book that kind of spoke about how to get ahead as a Black British woman. There might have been ones about African-American women, white women, but definitely not as a Black British woman. And that in itself wasn't enough to just sell it. We still had to kind of have all these, all this data, all these receipts, all this focus group. And I think yeah, if the industry is like shaken up a little bit more, you know, if there are some Femi Oguns in publishing that are willing to kind of disrupt it, I think that's the kind of next stage that we need to get at, essentially, where it's just more visibly different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, everything Yomi said, and I was just going to say as well, in terms of like this book, I think it happened in terms of a perfect storm as well. I think before this book came out, let's say in July, when we were kind of getting like reviews in and stuff like that, I think it was important. We knew it would be, I guess, culturally impactful and I guess some sort of landmark and critically acclaimed, like everybody was talking about it and stuff like that, from a publicity point of view. And what was, I guess, really important as well, and what's something that we realise is like publishing industry is so nice, but it's a business. And the fact that a book like this has sold and it's literally in everywhere, from like, you know, ASOS to Waterstones to Foyles to W.H. Smiths, I think that as well, that makes it, I guess, gives the confidence that more books and more stories like this can be told. And books like Akala, books like Reni's book, it makes the case like, it makes it more important that these books not only are good, and it's a good thing to do, and these stories are important, but also it will sell.
On that note, I think a couple of things. One thing that resonates with me is this thing about, in all cases, isn't it, the spotting that gap in the market, which is a classic thing across all businesses. But picking up on your thing about publishing, British Library is delighted to host on Tuesday the 13th of November, so those of you keen on that, we're running a Diverse Wisdom event with Jessica Huey, who is, again, one of the partners to the British Library. I think it's with, Hay House are the publishers of that, to try and find more diverse writers. So look at the British Library website, www.bl.uk, I should know, and then have a look further, and the details should be on there. I think we've got questions from this side of the room. Let's try and make the questions quite short, the answers short, as we can get as many in as we can get in, please.
Hi, my name is Sophie, and I'm interested in potentially opening up an enterprise. What I want to know from you is, what would be the most important advice you would give to a young person out of education who is considering entry into the creative media world?
Okay, so maybe everyone, a quick answer to that. What would be the advice you'd give to a young person? Most important thing. Who wants to kick off?
My one would be that, you know, and I say to a lot of young people that you are the architects of your own fortune. It's as simple as that. You know, just go in there fearless and just create.
I would say with the right advisors on many plans succeed. So they need to be like a sponge, be at events like this, and, you know, network, build relationships. That's really, really important.
Yeah, essentially agree with Kanya. I was going to say relationships are very important. You might not necessarily want to start your enterprise with your best friend, but having somebody that you bounce ideas off and that you respect and who respects your vision as well, I think is crucially important to just getting anything off the ground. Just making sure as well that someone's there to support you and just keep you sane throughout the process.
I would say seek inspiration in everything and anything, because by just, I guess, taking it all in and then working out how you can, you know, capture like the zeitgeist and work out how you can drive your own narratives forward has been key to where we are now.
I'd also say, you know, trust yourself on any day and every given event. Back and trust yourself 100%, because when you believe in you, people will believe in it. So don't be doubtful. How you show up is how people are going to respond and see you. So really embody that personally, I think, is really important. Who's on next? Oh, yeah, question here.
Hi, my name is Shanice. I'm a process improvement analyst at Barclays, so I've got a 9-to-5 job, but in the evenings and in my spare times, I work with my partner. We have a society where young people come together that are budding entrepreneurs, just to kind of bounce off of each other and be with like-minded people. So my question to you is, obviously when you're growing your business, there are always going to be times where you feel knocked, where you don't feel like continuing. And I know in my own personal experience that that's the case, and a lot of the times this is where we fail because we don't feel as though we can continue. Is there anything in particular that you kept in your mind to keep you going, to kind of push you through that glass ceiling so that you can then prosper in your business?
In those moments of doubt, what keeps you going? I think I know one. A couple of the answers are going to come through. Who wants to kick us off with that?
I was just going to say that I guess me and Elizabeth would always say that it was bigger than us. That really kept us going, because I think when initially we were kind of discussing the idea, it very quickly became not just about Elizabeth's want for a self-help or sort of guidebook. It became about all the other Elizabeths in the world and the girls that wanted books, the girls who weren't even old enough to think about kind of work, but could then be prepared from an earlier age, women who could look back and sort of it would resonate with them, even if they didn't necessarily need it in the same way. So I think when we used to feel kind of knocked, and I mean, as much as we had a 9 publishing bidding war, we also had a rejection in terms of when we put out one of our first submissions for an agent. And the thing that kind of kept us going, I think, was just knowing that it wasn't about us anymore, and that it developed into being about other people and other women, that we felt it was really important to have this kind of book.
Yeah, anyone else want to...
I would just say, I think it's really valuable to have a mastermind network of people that you can talk to, because you need to be able to kind of pick up the phone when you're feeling like despair or you know, you can sometimes feel overwhelmed. There needs to be people that you can pick up the phone and you value their kind of advice. Because, you know, having that network really makes all the difference, you know, and I can't, you know, I need to overemphasize how important this is to have that.
Yeah, Femi, do you want to add to that?
Because it's so funny, because sometimes you can come across like, oh, you know it all, but I didn't really get those struggles. But one thing I do really subscribe to is life, and then, you know, life's about discovering what your purpose is, and once you're able to discover what your purpose is, then you action it. So I think it's very much in line with what you said about it's much bigger than us. And when you're doing something that you're really, really passionate about, when you're burning that energy, you don't even feel it. Do you understand? So, I mean, all these disappointments that you might come across, all these hurdles, it just helps define the reasons as to why you're really in it for the first place.
Sir, question here.
Hi, my name is Brendan McParland. It's a bit of a, not stereotype, but for 25 years I've been in the black British industry, which is in the black beauty industry. So we started and formed Sleek Makeup 25 years ago, and MOBOs we supported early days, I have to say.
Ooh, there's a ripple away. I
Got straight
got
up.
some happy customers.
Fortunately, 25 years we started, and we actually just sold about 5 years ago. So now Boots has obviously got it now. The question I was actually going to pose is access to funding, access to finance, VCs now. One of the things that we as a...
Can I have your question just because of time? Only because of time.
Yeah.
Only because
so
of time.
has the market changed? Has it adopted sort of a new open market to black British entrepreneurs with access to funding? And has that platform changed?
Good question. I want to turn to you first of all, that one, Kanya.
Okay, I do think with all these kind of peer-to-peer lending, it's kind of changed the game now. You don't have to kind of rely on the kind of traditional sources where to get funding from. And I also should mention, before I forget and get into trouble, we are actually going to be launching an accelerator program where we're going to be providing finance, advice, support, in partnership with other organisations. So, I mean, basically go on our website and we'll, you know, sort of register part of our newsletter, and we'll be able to help with access to finance, because of the statistics out there show that certain communities find it more difficult to access funding, even though they disproportionately want to set their own business, you know, and I think that we need to change.
Hi. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm Siobhan Thomas. I am a Global Talent Acquisition Director at FTSE 100. My question is it must have been a really fine line trading between how we make the most of the black dollar or pound without exploiting it. I'm just wondering how you address that situation in each of your fields.
Okay. So I'm just wanting to just process the question bit of that. Is that can you reword it for me as a question?
How do you make the most of the black pound or dollar without exploiting it?
Yeah, I want to start off with this Slay in Your Lane.
I think that's one of the reasons why we didn't go for women of colour when we went to the publishers and we went to black, and when they asked us to change it, it was something that we didn't want to change. And so that's an example of us just being authentic to whatever product we actually put our names to, and whatever thing that we do. We get so many emails and so many people saying, do this, do that, and we if it's not authentic to Slaying Your Lane and the messages behind it, then we won't do it, even if it comes with a good fee or good paycheck or anything like that. So I think it's just staying authentic to that original phone call and that essentially felt need of why this book exists. And I think that's helped us and that's guided us so far in this journey.
So I was just going to add on to that as well. That's what part of why we didn't go down the route of speaking to Black women diasporically. So we were thinking, oh, should we talk about like Black women just as a homogenous group? Should we talk about Black women as a global group? But we knew that our experiences as Black British women was so distinct. We knew that we'd make less money, that it'd be sold probably in less countries, but we decided to stay authentic to it. And yeah.
Femi, what's your take on this? Because I guess in the one way, to exploit in the purest sense is really important, because when you're making Black films and so on, you've got a Black audience, they're probably hungry and need to see that representation. So what was your take on that?
Okay, so I'll talk about the film, and then I'll talk about just in terms of, you know, my method and how I've been able to approach that. So let's just talk about my company. What I've done, if I was looking to exploit, then I would keep my mouth shut a lot of times when it comes to the customers that I deal with, which are actors that don't like the hard truths. And I'll have about 25 branches right about now. So I just make sure that I just make sure that I'm faithful to what it is that I've created. For example, and I don't lose sight of it, because the fact is the drama school has grown so big now that we've got a swing which is divided into different places, where I say we've got a fair percentage of Black, white, Middle Eastern, whatever it was. And that's why I've kept our fees as low as possible. I think there's no other drama school that is as low. When it comes to film, that's an interesting one, because some of you people will probably know the person that I'm speaking about, but I've got a really good friend who has now just put out a feature film. And for me, it's a very stereotypical one. And he done an interview where he was asked the question, but you know, that level of responsibility. And he said that, well, the bottom line fact is, I go to these studios and I present all these different projects, and they don't want to put money down. So the one thing they do want to put money down is for that, you know, that gang lifestyle or whatever it was. So even up till now, I find myself not being able to, you know, tweeting congratulations on a DM and then deleting it, thinking, because I've got to say congratulations, but this. And that's what I'm saying. It's about that moral aspect, knowing what you're in it for, and knowing the kind of detrimental effect that you will have in your community if you become a slave to the money.
Okay, let's try and get a few more questions in, because we've still got canapes and drinks and so on, but I'm loving the energy in the room. Okay, okay, sir.
Very quickly, my name is Rudy Page. I'm the former sales and marketing manager of Dyke & Dryden. You've heard of Dyke & Dryden? Yes. I coined those three words, Afro, hair and beauty, and I put on those first two shows. And then in late 1980s, put on the first hair show in the West End called HairX.
Yeah,
my question to you, and we've got a HairX next year in Birmingham, 3rd and 4th of August. My question to all of you is, what is your next mountain to climb? Because we've always got, there's always another mountain.
Yeah, I'm being told by my boss, effectively, that's a good one to end on. That's a good question. It's a beautiful question to end on, actually. What's the next mountain to climb? Wow. Who would you like, actually pick who you'd like to answer that question first?
That's a question for all of you, but I only want no more than 5 words from all of you.
Okay. But who do you want to answer it first? Pick.
Kanya, because we met the other day with our work that she was doing with the blood transfusion service.
Okay, I think, well, it's an exciting chapter for the MOBO organisation, because we are developing the brand, extending the brand into many new areas. But I guess personally for me, I'm going to write a book, actually. I have a story to tell.
And for you, good Sarah, I don't climb mountains, I surf waves. It's the film production company. That's the last bit of the puzzle. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Me and Liz, we've talked about this a lot. I think, to be honest, a lot has happened in this past year and in the past few months specifically. So at the moment, I mean, I just turned 27 about a week ago or something. Can't even remember now.
You're young.
I know, and I think that's the thing, is that I feel young, so I feel like I just worry sometimes about peaking too soon. So I think I'm just trying, to be honest, to kind of internalize everything and just you know, I am Nigerian. We do tend to have this thing about, you know, independence is yesterday or something, and we have this thing about, you know, what's next kind of thing. So I think at the moment I'm genuinely just trying to like ride this wave and be happy and be content in what we've done in the past. Yeah, absolutely.
I think everything Yomi said in terms of just growing, staying your lane as a brand, just I guess seeing where this goes and but yeah, riding a wave and everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think mindful of that. I'm mindful of the time. I'm mindful of things. But I just want to turn maybe one last time to who's winning? First of all, who's winning the Twitter wars? Is it still #BL? MOBO.
BL MOBO, yes.
Yeah, and could we take maybe one quick question online, because I'm mindful the people are watching us all around the world as well.
Yeah.
And then some of the rest will have to wait until the networking area. You can ask people up close and personal the questions.
So I think this question touches on a question for many entrepreneurs. Do you feel alone starting out, and how do you overcome that aloneness? And also, how do you even kind of overcome the fear of starting?
So maybe any tips on that? How do you overcome that fear of starting and that aloneness? I mean, we've answered a bit of that aloneness with the network and so on. But what about that? Maybe that advice for people who are starting out, you know, here, or what would be the advice? Who wants to kick us off with that?
I would say purpose. I think when, you know, like you wake up and that first thing you think about, and you know, the last thing you go to sleep thinking about, that purpose is what, I guess, overrides the fear and the fear of starting. Not everybody has a Yomi, so to essentially help in terms of like, you know, the fear of doing things, but I would say purpose, and I think Femi spoke really brilliantly about it. So I think that's helped me and helped us.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I remember like, I think maybe in 2012 I started a sort of publication aimed at like young black teenage girls called Birthday Magazine with the help of like O2 Think Big and these charities. And I remember I said to Elizabeth, it was the first time that I'd gone to bed and woken up and it was the first time I hadn't been thinking about boys. I'd been thinking about something productive and I was like, this is truly meant to be. This is something I actually care about. Because normally I was just like, oh, who do I fancy? But this is actually, I actually cared about something bigger. So yeah, I think purpose. That was my weird way of saying purpose.
Am I allowed to answer it as we go along the panel? Yeah. I think for me, there's a number of things. I think you've got to be clear. I think you've got to be purposeful. I think you've got to know what you're about. I think you've got to back yourself. I think you need to do your research. I think you've got to have the attitude of an athlete. I think you've got to, as Kanya was saying, you know, you've got to surround yourself with good people. Network. You know, when you go out there afterward, it's as important as everything you did in here, everything that you heard in here. Because that classic thing about that adage about your net worth is your network is so, so true. When I first started going out there, sorry, this is a Nigerian me now.
Jumping out of
probably pretending it's not. But I think there's something for me that's very important here, which is that thing about when I first started going out networking, I thought that people would become my client. And then what I realized, because I was a life coach, business coach, you know, I could coach anybody. But what I realized was I met good, bad, indifferent people doing all sorts of things. Photographers, filmmakers, financial people, graphic designers, web designers. You never know what you're going to need. Collect exceptional people, know what your values are, work together, support each other. You've heard that thing about camaraderie today. I think one of the things that we don't do enough as creatives, generally, and perhaps we don't do enough as a community generally, is that thing about really networking hard, supporting each other, connecting, being really resourceful. When I was a singer and performer, you know, you'll know what it's like, isn't it? There's, you know, the whole singing thing. It was often me, ego. How can we support each other? How can the photographer help the graphic designer? How can this person help? Work together, support each other, be shrewd. The resourcefulness that we have in this room, it's off the scale. So I think you've got to be really, really, really resourceful. And if somebody's not funding you, do it yourself, would be my advice.
Yeah. You don't want to find yourselves being that coulda, shoulda, woulda. Yeah. That's the truth. God does not make mistakes. And he hasn't made a mistake when it comes to creating you. That's the truth. There's nobody else like you in this world. And life's about discovering, as I said, that purpose. And what a great way to find that purpose through what you choose to do. Remember what I said, like, for some of you, do you really want to find yourself in that situation where that person can dictate every aspect of your life?
Very true. There's two things I would say. when you're out there afterwards networking, think about what you can do for the person you're talking to, not what's in it for yourself. Because often when you do a good turn for someone else, when you hear them and truly listen to them and see what they want and do a good turn for them, it doesn't always come back to you from them, but it will come back to you from someone else. So that's one bit of advice I'd give to you.
Very powerful. I think that's a lovely moment.
The second is...
Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. The second bit is success in life is about the relentless pursuit of your goals. Statistics out there show that it's not about money, education, luck, but it's about having the right positive attitude. That makes all the difference. So do more, dare more, and be more.
Wonderful. Isabel, was there something you were just going to say? Isabel, were you going to just add something?
No, I don't have anything to add. Networking is really important.
We're just about to do it. So can we, please, can we do a number of thank yous? First of all, can we thank Elizabeth Uviebinené? Round of applause. Yomi Adegoke. I'm loving it because of the Nigerian names, like it's really easy for me. Femi Oguns MBE. And our partner in crime, the founder of MOBO, so our partner for today, Kanya King CBE.